This is David Wild, founder of allhazards.net. In this video, I'm going to be describing one of our premium products, the Critical Threat Outlook, or CTO for short. If you'd like to find out more about this product, I'd encourage you to go to our website at allhazards.net. So the Critical Threat Outlook is a weekly report that's primarily aimed at emergency managers, risk assessors, security professionals, emergency responders, and anybody else who's really interested in knowing what the risks are and preparing for risks in the future. So we have a really wide range of subscribers for this Outlook. It gives advance warning of risks in the United States over the coming week, and it does so down to the state and city level, but it's a United States-wide outlook. It's written every weekend and draws from a wide variety of open source intelligence and publicly available sources that cover risks as diverse as weather and cybersecurity. Also includes our unique threat matrix, which lists some of the primary kinds of threats that can affect the US, and these are color coded as green, yellow, orange, and red, according to the relative risks in these particular threats over the coming weeks. So that gives a really quick and easy way to see what's likely to be a risk for the United States over the coming week. We do kind of give a disclaimer. We try our best to make this really accurate, but we encourage you not to use the Critical Threat Outlook as a primary source or sole source of information for critical decision making. It's meant to give you an overall view of the kinds of risks and threats that are coming over the next week. So subscribers to the CTO will receive an email every Sunday. And you can see the email here. We prepared over the weekend, and then sometime in Sunday afternoon or evening, usually we send out these emails. So this is what you'll get in your inbox when you subscribe. This is this week's this week's email, sorry. I want to point out a few things here. At the top here you can see it says red threats this week: hurricane, flooding, heat, wildfire, and cyber attack. This is just a very kind of brief, and it comes in the summary of your email you get when it's in your inbox. Seeing what the red threats are. These are the ones that are highlighted in red in the threat matrix. Then there's an executive summary that describes a little bit more about those red threats. For this week, it's hurricane, for the possible impact of Hurricane Irma late next week. Flooding, for the ongoing terrible catastrophic floods from Harvey and several other systems that are going to be over the US this week. Heat, still a heat wave in the west. Wildfires are still a big risk in the west and northwest. Cyber attacks are a big issue right now on an ongoing basis. We have what's called a special threat, which is at the yellow level this week for the Texas infrastructure, particularly due to these chemical site explosions and toxic waste sites. We then have a breakdown of hazards by particular area. Let me make this, maybe try and make this a little bit bigger. And this includes the weather outlook and hazards, which has a review of the hazardous weather. This includes a summary here of your floods, hurricanes, heat waves, winds, rainfall, risks of severe weather, fire conditions, fire weather conditions. Then we have other natural hazards that include earthquakes that have happened over the last week that might portend future earthquakes, volcano status of current volcanoes, particularly in the west, Hawaii and Alaska, risk of wildfires, and drought is also covered in this section. And then cybersecurity, technological and adversarial hazards includes everything from malware through to space weather, whether the solar flares that could be disruptive, any nuclear issues going on, any infrastructure issues going on, and then anything adversarial. This can include protests or threats, external threats to the country. So a very wide range covered here, but it's all covered in this one executive summary you can really read in less than a minute. You'll then see the threat matrix, and as we said before, this is a summary of the summary, but we classify, this is kind of a unique thing, we classify these threats. Green means there's not a obvious threat this week, although you can never tell. Orange means there's generally some elevated level of threat. So for this week, it's so there is some severe threat. There's some threat from drought, particularly in the upper parts of the country. There is some adversarial threat for various reasons, and the Texas infrastructure. And then the red ones are the ones where there's a kind of serious threat, in this case wildfire, cyber attack, hurricane, flooding and heat. Now the criteria for these we're evolving over time, but for some of them we have very specific criteria, and some of them there's a little bit more subjectivity in it. So this is meant as a guide, it's not absolute. Now, if you want to drill a little deeper, you can actually click on the link in the email, and that will open up a PDF file from our site. And this PDF includes a lot more information. So it's a nicely formatted PDF, so it's very amenable to printing if you like to read it that way. You can see the executive summary again and the threat matrix again. But if we scroll down on the subsequent pages, we get much more detail. Generally, for each category, there's some graphical information and then some text information. Here we have the hazards outlook. This is what the Weather Service is predicting are going to be significant threats over the coming week. We also have 3 focus areas which are referenced in the text. For this week, flooding and heavy rain is a risk, so we're actually looking here at the predicted heavy rainfall areas on Tuesday. Hurricane Irma is a risk, and we can see here the track, and severe weather is a risk on Monday, and so we can see that area there. If we scroll down, we'll get a text description here, which includes an overview of expected weather events, and then broken down by severe weather, hurricane, fire weather, and long-term outlook. The long-term outlook is really just a projection ahead as to whether there's going to be above or below normal temperatures and precipitation over the next few months. We then have a list of specific weather hazards, and this is just a tabulation of those hazards, and some people find that easier to read. At the end of each of these sections, we have a sources of more information. We like to well source the information we're giving. So again, if you want to drill even deeper, you can go to these websites, and these are the websites that we primarily use in this case for bringing this information together. You then have the other natural hazards section. We've got earthquakes in the prior week. We've got volcano status. We've got the monthly wildfire outlook. We've got the drought monitor, which is updated every week. And we have a section for any public health issues. This gets populated, particularly in the winter when there's flu epidemics and so on. And then we have an overview with reports on earthquakes, the volcanoes, and wildfires, and drought in text form. And again, we have our sources and more information. Finally, we have cybersecurity, technological, and adversarial hazards. These are hazards that might be considered man-made hazards. Broken down by these 3 areas. You can see these graphics actually show where there's currently unusual cyber attack activity. Sometimes this can be informative. Right now there's a lot going on in Europe, and it looks like in Southeast Asia maybe. Nuclear radiation readings, these from a website called radiationnetwork.com, and this shows if there are any unusual radiation readings around the country. And then the next 2 days, from Monday and Tuesday, predicted solar activity. Right now everything looks quiet there. Then we have text, and with this section we actually heavily reference. So we have in this week we actually have 6 primary cybersecurity and privacy kind of alerts that we think are the ones that are the most significant and interesting, and each of these is referenced with a link that comes down to a page where you can go to a page with more information about this. This week we've got malware campaigns against Chrome and Firefox, a government website found to be holding hosting ransomware, some modems vulnerable to attack, a spam bot with released information on 711 million email addresses. Researchers have managed to demonstrate high-dimensional quantum encryption. That's a kind of privacy side one. And police, another privacy one here, police can no longer keep license plate data secret. In technological, we have any reports of nuclear incidents and concerns. Here we note there was a Texas nuclear plant continued to run through Hurricane Harvey fine. This week there's no disruptive solar events predicted, but if there are, we'll discuss them there. And then other we can reference, in this case, infrastructure or dam issues that are going on. So any other kind of infrastructure, technological issues will be here. Then adversarial tends to be either external threats or risks of internal protests or disruption, and we'll reference any that we think are important here. You can see quite an extensive list of sources here. Some of these sources are kind of meta sources, and we drill down. So we take a really very wide set of sources for putting this section together. So there you have it. This is this week's critical threat outlook, and if you subscribe, the subscribing costs just $19.95 for a whole year. So this is really very cheap. I don't know how long we can keep it this low, but for right now we're going to keep it at $19.95 a year. And for that small amount of money, you're going to get one of these every week. That really does give you a very easy to digest overview of the threats facing the country. If you'd like to find out more, I would encourage you to go to allhazards.net. You can click on CTO there and find out more about the critical threat outlook. Thank you for watching this video.